Hello and welcome to Northern Nightmares, your home for nightmarish stories throughout Canada and beyond. I'm your host Andrew, and today I thought I'd bring you a new genre of horrors. What if I told you humans aren't the only killers that reside on this planet? Humans believe that we're the top of the food chain. Nothing but other humans can stop us. However, from time and time again, Mother Nature likes to remind us who the real apex predators are. If you're not sure what that is, the definition of an apex predator is at the top of the food chain. It has no predators and hunts prey to control population, maintains the health of an ecosystem. So in today's episode, I bring you 6 tales of animals that have shown humans who's the boss. Now, a few of these tales are in controlled environments, in a matter of speaking. The others are out in the wild for the most part. My main source for a few of these stories come from my favorite show, The Last Podcast on the Left. I'll be mentioning them again a little later, so keep your ears open. Let's begin our first story with a famous circus performing Tyke the elephant. Now, elephants aren't considered an apex predator as they're herbivores, but Tyke deserves to be on this list for the revenge she brought on the villains of her story. Tyke was born in Mozambique of Southeast Africa and taken from her family to be sold and leased to circuses by the infamous Hawthorne Corporation. Now, the Hawthorne Corporation was notorious for the enslavement of many elephants, being forced to work and trained in the entertainment business. As kids, we always thought this was amazing to see elephants performing tricks before our very eyes. Our little innocent minds couldn't comprehend how this might make the beasts feel. Yes, I know they can't communicate to us by voice, but animals are intelligent enough to show us how they feel. Take your dog or cat, for example. Even though they can't speak, you know when they're scared, when they're happy, or even angry. Elephants are no different. They've been known to display high levels of cognitive and self-awareness. They can even recognize themselves in mirrors. They're comparable to some primates and even small children. They can understand human speech, cues, and have incredible long-term memories. They are considered one of the most intelligent animals on the earth, with also having the largest brain among land animals. Tyke remembers the pain she felt when taken from her family, no different than how we would feel if we were taken at a young age. She was sent to the U.S. after her capture, and the Hawthorne Corporation sent her around the country performing at various circus events. When not working or being trained, Tyke was chained up, usually up to 22 hours a day. She was repeatedly beaten to submit to the dominance of her owners. This went on for the better part of her life. This was also a similar situation for many elephants owned by the corporation. They had no heart for the animals they owned. Now, jumping to 1993, she performed at the Jaffa Shrine Center in Altoona, Pennsylvania. She managed to escape out the front doors and was on the loose for an hour. Her rampage caused up to $14,000 in damage. She later attacked a tiger trainer later that day. Another incident at the Tarzan Zerbini Circus in North Dakota, Tyke had enough and escaped her handler, rampaging through the event for at least 30 minutes. She was eventually settled down and chained up for the rest of the event. Her handler suffered many injuries, including broken ribs and a punctured lung. These incidents wouldn't be what made her story come to light. In 1994, she was sent to Honolulu, Hawaii to perform with the Circus International at the Neil Blaisdell Center. She managed to escape by attacking her trainer Alan Campbell and groomer Dallas Beckwith. Alan was knocked down and dragged for a while until Tyke crushed him to death with her trunk, and critically injuring Dallas by throwing him around a few times. She managed to flee the center and was on the run for 30 minutes through the streets. After officers finally caught up with Tyke, 2 officers fired somewhere between 85 to 90 bullets at her. She finally succumbed to her wounds and died of blood loss. However, her story doesn't end there, because her story was heavily investigated and the cruel torture she suffered was brought to light. The corporation and owner, John Kuno Jr., went through many lawsuits from victims of the rampage. They went through many investigations with the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Animal Welfare Act. Eventually, they had many violations of inadequate vet care, poor living conditions, and untrained staff handling them. They were out of the elephant business shortly after Tyke's death, and signed an agreement with the USDA and relinquished all 16 elephants they had to a sanctuary in Tennessee. However, they continued in the small animal business for another 23 years, mostly dealing with lions and tigers. They still dealt with many more investigations though, complaints and violations, as the lions and tigers suffered no different than the elephants. It wasn't sometime till 2015 to 2017 that the Hawthorne Corporation finally shut down for good. So it's unfortunate that Tyke couldn't live a happy life, but her story managed to save a future generations of elephants' enslavement. In my opinion, she died a hero. So next time you see an elephant at a sanctuary, just remember, it was Tyke that changed what could have been the extinction of these majestic creatures. Our next story takes us all the way out to Las Vegas, the city of sin, where magic duo Siegfried and Roy's career ended when their white tiger Montecore decided to attack Roy Horn. In 1959, the famous duo had met each other while both on the German cruise ship the TS Bremen, where the two both worked. Siegfried was a magician and Roy was a waiter. They both bonded over their love for performing arts. They eventually started touring around Europe, honing their magical act, and their first animal partner was a cheetah. They eventually got invited to Sin City in 1967, where they built their famous reputation. Their act involved illusions, making animals float and disappear. Roy was the trainer for the most part, but they both had a deep love and bond with all their animal partners. Their most famous animals were the white lions and white tigers. It wasn't until 1990 that the duo headlined for the Mirage, and that led eventually to their famous residency until 2003. By the end of the 90s, they were the highest paid performers. They had grossed $500 million at the time. However, on October 3rd, 2003, their famous careers would have unfortunately come to a close. While performing during a show, Montecore, their white tiger, moved incorrectly on stage. Roy tried to move him back into place for the illusion to begin. However, Montecore figured he probably wanted to play, harmlessly bit him on his sleeve of his shirt. Roy, thinking nothing of it, and probably had done this many times, tapped Montecore on the nose with his microphone. This is when Montecore released him and bit into Roy's neck. The 400-pound white tiger dragged him off stage, only to eventually release him when staff rushed with fire extinguishers to distract Montecore. Roy had suffered significant blood loss, and it was later determined a stroke had begun prior to the attack. He did survive this incident, but had permanent impairment to motor functions, partial paralysis, and difficulties with verbal abilities. It was unknown as to why Montecore attacked Roy, but theory suggests he saved Roy's life. If it wasn't for the blood loss he suffered, it's thought the stroke could have been much worse. Montecore probably could sense the stroke happening, possibly by scent, as it is said that animals can detect things coming off of us before signs show. Montecore probably looked at Roy like one of his cubs, and like any cat, latched onto his neck to protect him. After this incident, Roy defended Montecore, swearing that he saved his life. Montecore was later moved to a sanctuary and lived peacefully for another 11 years. passing away at the age of 17 from an illness. Now, regardless of if Montecore saved Roy or not, it is still a wild animal, none the same, and those traits never go away. It's in these genes. I for one think that he did save him, as there's no record of any abusive or cruelty found. I believe the duo wholeheartedly loved their animals as if they were a family, just like how we love our animals as our own. After this incident, the duos retired and had peaceful lives. Roy eventually had passed away in May 2020 due to COVID-19 complications, and Siegfried passed 8 months later due to pancreatic cancer. May these legends live on forever, and may in the next life they are reconnected with their beloved friend Montecore. We now head over to the San Francisco Zoo, where another famous tiger made the news by getting some revenge on a few dumb teenagers. This is the story of the famous Tatiana the Siberian tiger. Tatiana was born at the Denver Zoo in 2005, and shortly after her birth, she was sent to the San Francisco Zoo to be a mate for another tiger with the unfortunate name of Tony. All the names anyone could name a tiger, they went with Tony. I guess that's where he ended up after all those commercials. Siberian tigers are the largest cats on the planet. They're known for their thick fur and distinct stripes. The stripes are like our fingerprints. Every pattern is different. They're found in the cold forest regions of Russia and far east regions of Asia. These tigers are considered the most dangerous land predators on Earth. What made this particular tiger famous was her first incident in December 2006. Lori Kolmajian was the trainer at the time. During feeding time, she entered the tiger area to feed these animals. Now, for the record, these cats were all in cages. They had no way to come close to the employees. How it works is the trainer would put the food in a slot or sometimes on the floor and slide it underneath the cage. Lori happened to drop a piece of meat in a drain trough outside the cage. Tatiana reached under the cage and seized her right arm with her paw. Her arm was pulled into the cage, and her hand and forearm ended in Tatiana's mouth. She tried to use her other arm to push Tatiana away, but managed to grab that arm with her other paw and pull her even closer. A Siberian tiger's bite can inflict an estimated 950 to 1,050 pounds per square inch of pressure. This much force can crush bones and even sever prey's spinal cord for an effective kill. Another employee rushed over and used a long-handed squeegee or mop to distract the tiger by striking it on the head to release Lori. Thankfully, Lori survived, and still today, however, she went through several surgeries and had many skin grafts. Her right arm recovered some functions but remained permanently impaired for the most part. However, this isn't the end of Tatiana. Now, let's jump to a year later, where a few friends thought it would be a great idea to visit the zoo after hours on Christmas Day 2007. Carlos and Gerardo Susla Jr. and brothers Paul and Kubur Dollywall waited for the park to close and snuck over to the tiger area to visit Tatiana and Tony. Carlos and Paul were over 21 and Kubur was 19. All three were drinking and smoking weed when they thought it was a great idea to go to the zoo. Now let me just say, we as a species know when we shouldn't do something. Like natural sensors are built into us. When you see a giant tiger in front of you, your body basically says, keep your distance and don't fuck with that. When you have substances that remove those warnings in you, it's definitely not a good idea to fuck with a beast like Tatiana. Now, another known fact, one of the Siberian tiger's natural threats is a brown bear. These two beasts are known to fight one another and both have been known to do significant damage. When these three little dumb idiots decided to sit on the railing of a tiger pen and throw what apparently was acorns at Tatiana, having a grand old time just trying to piss her off for fun. Well, when they finally got bored and decided to leave this is when Tatiana decided to strike. After they turned their backs and walked away, Tatiana slowly moved over to the wall of her pen, and with her powerful back legs, managed to jump up and over the wall. Tatiana was out for blood. In a matter of minutes, she had leapt onto Carlos, sinking her teeth into his neck. She killed him quickly. His body was found with blunt force trauma to the head, many puncture wounds, and claw marks all over his body, spinal fractures, and cuts to his jugular veins. After killing Carlos, Tatiana sat with the body for a while. I would think, like any cat, she was just playing with her food. She eventually followed a trail to the brothers after they fled when she attacked. They ended up at the zoo's cafe, where staff were cleaning up for the night. The boys were screaming for help, screaming about a tiger being loose, but staff figured it was a prank, thinking some drunk shenanigans. Staff called 911, telling authorities the boys were causing mischief with a so-called tiger attack, as the staff couldn't see Tatiana at the time. Eventually, Tatiana caught up with the boys, cornering them at a hamburger stand. One staff member tried to help the boys, but Tatiana just gave him a glare to say, "Back off, this isn't your fight," and the staff member fled. The boys managed to call 911 themselves, demanding authorities to come rescue them. However, they were unable as they couldn't risk the paramedics getting hurt, and the boys were in a spot no one can get them without dealing with Tatiana. Eventually, a few brave police officers confronted her. One of the officers managed to shoot her on her side, and she turned and charged the officer. He managed to put another bullet in her face, ending the life of Tatiana. The Dhaliwal brothers were rushed to the hospital with many wounds, deep claw marks, and bites. Now, after the whole ordeal, the Dhaliwal brothers sued the zoo for $900,000. Now, I know what you're thinking. These idiots caused this. However, they weren't technically in the wrong. As one, it couldn't exactly be proved that they upset Tatiana. The zoo was heavily investigated by OSHA, USDA, and the San Francisco PD. For one thing, there should have been no way Tatiana been able to escape, as the zoo required a 20-foot wall for tigers. It was discovered, though, the zoo only had a 12-foot wall, and in their documents, they stated that they had a 16-foot wall, knowing full well they didn't. Having a 16-foot wall is like the bare minimum, but a 20-foot wall is recommended. So in a way, the brothers and the zoo are the villains in this story. The brothers won their case and received their money, even though they're pieces of shit. Now remember, Lori, the trainer from a year ago, she decided to sue the zoo after this incident. She won her case as well, but an amount that was undisclosed. So remember, if you think messing with an apex predator is a great idea, just remember, Tatiana, an animal like her, will treat you like a chew toy. Oh, also the Dhaliwal brothers never changed after this event. They continued getting in trouble with the law for another few years, and the oldest, Paul, died of a drug overdose at the age of 24. Now it's time that we take this story underwater as we explore the famous story of Tilikum the Killer Whale. Tilikum was a 12,000-pound orca whale that was captured in the waters around Iceland in 1983. He was transferred to Sealand of the Pacific Water Park in Victoria, BC, where he spent the next 9 years here till he moved to his permanent home at Seaworld in Orlando, Florida. Orca whales have a very similar intelligence level like elephants. Orcas display traits of self-awareness and have very long-term memories. Orcas also deal with stress and psychological pain when separated from their families. The name killer whale comes from ancient sailors have witnessed these majestic creatures attack and kill other whale species. Orcas are considered a whale because of their size, but they also fit in the dolphin family. Dolphins and orcas share similar traits as well, intelligence being one of them. If you've never been to Seaworld, it involves trained divers swimming amongst these animals, performing tricks for food, and splashing onlookers. Tilikum spent at least 25 years at Seaworld, and he sired himself 21 calves that eventually were sold to other water parks in North America. Tilikum, like any wild animal, never wanted to be a trick-performing whale, and I'm sure he wanted to live freely in the oceans with his family. For his sufferings, it's been known Tilikum's been involved with 3 major instances with humans. Starting on February 20th, 1991, Tilikum was living in a pool with 2 other female orcas in which both were pregnant and exhibiting aggressive behavior. This was at Sealand in BC a year before he was transferred to Orlando. Part-time employee Kelty Byrne happened to fall into the pool, and all 3 whales battered her around and submerged her below the water. It was thought that this attack wasn't malicious, but Kelty was looked at as a plaything in their territory. For 10 minutes, they tossed her around and eventually drowned her by keeping her at the bottom of the pool. Staff tried to save her with buoys and distract the whales, but were unsuccessful. It wasn't until another 2 hours until they were able to recover her body. Now, a little fact, orcas, if you didn't know, have razor-sharp teeth, sometimes between 40 to 56 interlocking fangs. Their bite is one of the strongest in the animal kingdom, with an estimated 19,000 psi. A Siberian tiger has nothing on these guys. Now let's jump to 1999, when Tilikum was living his life at SeaWorld Orlando. One night, on July 5th, 1999, 27-year-old Daniel Dukes thought it would be a great idea to have a midnight swim with Tilikum. Daniel stripped down to his boxers and jumped into the pool, thinking this beautiful creature would love his company. The next morning, though, he was found draped over Tilikum's back. The autopsy confirmed the death was drowning. SeaWorld claimed it was hypothermia, as it was 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 degrees Celsius. Daniel had many bite wounds and bruises covering his body. Also, to make things even worse, and how to show how intelligent these animals are, Tilikum had bit off his penis and one of his testicles. Come on, Tilikum, we know you were mad at Daniel for violating your space, but you have to do that to him? That hurts me thinking of it. After this, Tilikum lived on to fight another day. On February 24th, 2010, would be the incident that changed things forever for SeaWorld. Don Branchu, a highly trained SeaWorld trainer, was with Tilikum getting ready to perform the Dine with Shamu event. She was laying down next to Tilikum on the shallow part of the pool when Tilikum grabbed her, possibly by the ponytail, and proceeded to toss her about for 45 minutes in front of a live audience. Staff tried unsuccessfully to distract the whale, but didn't get to save her in time. Don's autopsy confirmed the cause of death was drowning and blunt force trauma. Tilikum had severed her spinal cord, fractured her jawbone, ribs, and cervical vertebrae. Her scalp was completely torn off, dislocating her left arm and leg, and torn off her right arm, which was later recovered. This whole event spawned numerous investigations in SeaWorld. Also, a documentary was called Blackfish, written by Gabriella Calperthwaite. This showed an in-depth look of the horrors of SeaWorld. SeaWorld, however, continues business as usual though. The only thing that really changed is the trainers aren't allowed in the water anymore. Now I want to give a little shout out to last podcast on the left. Ed Larson covers a deep dive in the history of SeaWorld if you're interested. They have a 2-part series called The Horrors of SeaWorld that covers everything from how they started to other whales like Tilikum, the Blackfish movie, and where they are today. I would highly recommend it that you check it out. I'll have a link to their show in my show notes. So in the end, Tilikum continued to live until 2017, where he eventually died of a bacterial lung infection. Seaworld has stated that all their whales, when they eventually pass away, they won't own anymore, as the Tilikum incident changed that for them forever. These animals don't deserve to be locked up. We should view them from a distance and let them live their life. Now I have 2 more stories for you, but they're short ones to wrap up this episode. The first one happens in a Florida retirement community in 2023, and I'll ask you this: which animal is known to be most common in Florida? If you said the alligator, you're correct. Approximately 1.3 million alligators live in Florida, typically living in brackish shallows and saltwater areas. Between 1948 to 2021, there's been 442 unprovoked attacks from gators. Only 26 people have died in that time span. That's 1 alligator attack every 3 years. Their bite is estimated to be between 2,000 to 3,000 psi, making it possible to crush bones and hold large prey firmly in their impressive jaws. Now, in a retirement community, it's advised that if you have a small dog, to make sure that when you're on walks around bodies of water, to be in the middle of the water and your dog. In the Spanish Lakes Fairways community, Henry, the 11-foot alligator, was well known among the residents. He was frequently fed from everyone, which would increase his boldness that led to his day in the spotlight. 85-year-old Gloria Surge took her little dog for a walk on February 2023. However, when she reached the local pond, her dog was looking mighty tasty to Henry. When close enough, Henry sprang from the water, aiming for the dog. However, Gloria was in the way and ended up getting grabbed by the ankle and pulling her straight into the water. Neighbors saw this and dashed to her rescue, but it was too late. Henry had dragged her to the bottom of the pond, and she unfortunately died from drowning. Her dog managed to escape, and I'm assuming ended up in the care of her family. I couldn't find anything saying where it went. Her family ended up filing a lawsuit against the community, stating that they should have removed the dangerous animal. Wildlife officials did manage to find Henry, and he was euthanized. This kind of story is a reminder that when we get too comfortable around these animals, we forget that they can still kill us if they so choose. So be careful when you go to Florida. Even though gators are like rats there, they're still extremely dangerous. Our last story takes us in my home country of Canada, where we head to Banff in Alberta. Near the end of September 2023, Doug Inglis and Jenny Goss, both 62, who were experienced hikers for their age. They were accompanied by their border collie Trish as well. Well, on this event, the family were camping in the Red Deer River Valley area of the Banff National Parks. Parks Canada had received a Garmin InReach SOS alert sometime around 8 p.m. on the 29th from the couple, stating, "Bear attack bad." Due to the severe weather, a response team arrived at the location around 1 a.m., finding the family deceased. It was discovered they had followed all the safety protocols when in grizzly bear territory. Their food were hung from a tree, and bear mace was found among their belongings. The canister was fully depleted, and it was thought the bear attacked them when they were in their tent. However, the bear was still on the hunt and came back and proceeded to charge the response team. They managed to put the bear down, and it was discovered to be a 25-year-old female grizzly bear in poor health, bad teeth, and lower than normal body fat. It was assumed to be extremely hungry and preparing for hibernation. And for the record, there's only been 3 non-fatal attacks with grizzly bears in Banff in the last decade before this tragic incident. I hope you've learned some really important lessons from this episode. We should respect these animals and view them from a distance. Sometimes, though, Mother Nature says otherwise, and we can only hope she spares us to live another day. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and I've had so much fun researching these stories. I had so many more I found, but I figured maybe in the future I'll do a part 2 to this. If you have any other stories like this or any genres of horror you wish me to cover, feel free to email me at northernnightmares@outlook.ca. Follow me on Instagram and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcasts. Next week, I don't know yet what story will be. I have a few scripts to pick from, so keep watch for my teases. I'll see you soon. Sweet dreams, and remember, nightmares are closer than you think.